Hi, everyone. We're excited to talk to you about user-centered design in the enterprise today. So between us, we have about 17 years experience in enterprises across a number of industries and domains. And we both worked on a 3-year legacy replacement project for a B2B leasing company, which we're taking a lot of our learnings from. So a bit about us. Hi, Gabe here. I'm a principal consultant at Thoughtworks. I'm based in London. I'm originally from the States, but I've been here for many, many years now in the UK. And I really enjoy helping organizations establish and grow their product and design capabilities. So the people, the practices, the mindset. And I've seen that the most successful teams have a focus on users and a strong collaboration between product design and engineering disciplines. So for me, this is where the most exciting work happens.
And thank you, Gabe, for the introduction. And hi, everyone. I'm a lead experience design consultant at Thoughtworks. And I'm based in London, and I worked in Manchester, Germany, and Istanbul offices. I enjoy solving complex problems and large-scale digital transformation projects, and I'm fascinated by how designing and delivering software can transform a company's business, organization, and culture. And I love speculative design, imagining the future and solving future problems as well as today's problems. So to start, we want to give you a flavor of what an enterprise environment looks like. Enterprise solutions are crucial to operating the business. For example, CRM, help desk, e-commerce engine, trading platform. They are often very complex in business domain and user journeys. Usually, companies need multiple platforms to meet organization and business needs. So sometimes technical infrastructure can't support the business needs, and therefore they have to implement alternative solutions to react to the market quickly. So in most cases, that solution is Excel or other third-party solutions. So that's how enterprise solutions become a collection of complicated internal applications. Generally, products are low maturity and investment in design, but that means greater opportunity for designers to create an impact. So mistakes can cost millions. At one client, if system went down, they could lose 1 million per day in revenue. So enterprise users are power users. They use these systems all day long, and they are highly proficient in how they work. And users have to use the systems. They usually don't have any other choice. And finally, stakeholders can be very protective of users' time.
Cool, thanks for the intro, Ezra. So we're going to talk to you about 4 stories about design in the enterprise and share our learnings of working in enterprises with you today. So just a little bit of what each one is going to be. We have 4, and at the end of each section, we're going to pause for 30 seconds just to give you a chance to write any questions you have on that particular story into the chat. We're not going to answer them in. We'll come back at the end and have some time for Q&A. So first, you've heard a little bit about us. We'd like to know about you. So we're going to launch a quick poll with these 2 questions. So I am just going to find that in the list. And there we go. So if you could just take a few seconds to answer that, just to give us a sense of who our audience is. And like it says on the slide, these are confidential. It's used for this talk only. We're not using it for anything else. And I'm just letting those roll in. So I'm getting an interesting, we'll share the results with you at the end. We're getting an interesting mix of designers, product managers, engineers, BAs, 1 QA, executives, founders, a few others. Cool, it looks like most people put in, so I'm gonna end it there. And share results just to give you an idea. This is the kind of mix of the audience. So thank you for doing it. That helps us. And then the next question is, so I'm just going to launch it now, is have you worked on an enterprise product before? So the description that Esra just gave, have you done that before? So we're getting a lot of yeses coming through. About 75% of you are saying that right now, but good portion of no's. And I think things are slowing down a little bit now. And I'm gonna stop it there just for sake of time. So you can see a good portion of you have worked on internal products. So great, hope you can see some of the work that you're doing here and can learn from what we're talking about today. So thank you for doing that. And we are going to move on with our stories now. So I'm first up, and I'm going to talk to you about my most important design tool, which are one-to-one catch-ups. So what comes to your mind when you think of a one-to-one catch-up? I think they're most commonly associated with managing people, meetings that managers and team members have to check in on performance or well-being. But I've found that they're a really powerful tool as a designer because they help me build relationships and establish trust. And with these relationships, I have more influence, greater visibility of challenges, and more importantly, getting more people to talk about users. So in working in product teams, I found there's 3 relationships that are most important to me as a designer to build. It's the product manager, the tech lead, and the business analyst. So the product manager is the single most important relationship for me to build because we work so closely together on so many things. And I know if this relationship is not in a good state, it can cause me a lot of pain later, especially if we're not aligned on how we're going to work with users together. Second, the tech lead. They're the heart of the engineering team and extremely knowledgeable and skilled. Whilst the product manager is the most important relationship for me, the tech lead is one of the most influential. When I've built this relationship, they help me balance UX and technical design decisions with the team. And they'll come to me with UX questions, which we can work through together, and that avoids fires later on. And lastly, the business analyst. The BAs know the backlog end-to-end process inside and out and work closely with the product manager on prioritization. By regularly meeting with the BA, I have someone that's close to the coalface, who's aligned with me on design and advocates speaking to users. They also flag any changes to the backlog, so I can avoid emergency design surprises. It's also important to build relationships outside of the product team to have a broader impact. Stakeholders and leadership can be amplifiers of design. I share quotes with them, invite them to user sessions, and send them video snippets of user research so they can share with their teams and their managers. There's nothing quite as impactful as a director or head of talking about what they saw users saying or doing. And design enthusiasts, they're an untapped potential. These are people who are naturally excited about design or had a previous career or education in design. Seek them out and connect, and even form a community. And meeting with new joiners is an opportunity to accelerate their onboarding by sharing context and the bigger picture and influence. Recently, we had an experience of a new associate product manager joining a team. They joined a few user research sessions and workshops, and I noticed that they were a bit quiet, which isn't unusual for a new person joining. But I set up a one-to-one catch-up to share some context of the product and designs. And they found it really useful to understand the full picture of things. But then at the end, they asked, I've never really worked with a UX designer before. Can you explain what the UX process is exactly? At that point, the value of one-to-ones really hit home and make space for people to ask anything. The questions that they can't really bring up in meetings because they don't want to take up other people's time. These conversations are a great alignment tool because they help bring a lot more to workshops and discussions when they've been aligned. The trust equation is a tool that's helped me with relationship building. The thing along the top helps you build trust. So this is demonstrating expertise, getting things done, and being trusted with information. And at the bottom, the thing that breaks trust most is acting in your own self-interest over someone else's or the company's. So one-to-ones and relationships certainly don't come without their challenges. First, it's on top of the day job that you have as a designer. It takes time to schedule and prepare and actually have one-to-ones. And I've found that the one-to-ones are most valuable when I've prepared things to talk about, and that takes thinking time. 2, patience. Takes time to grow relationships and for that trust to establish, but keep investing in them. When you're busy, it's easy to see one-to-one catch-ups in your calendar and think, there's nothing really to talk about this week, so let's just cancel it. But I've found making that time pays off in the long run. And 3, can be difficult to have discussions with people that are actively advocating against design and speaking with users. This could be because they've seen it done badly in the past, they just don't believe in it or understand it, or they just don't like change and trying new and different things. But with them, I find asking and listening, finding a compromise, but keeping to a red line is the best way. So having one-to-one catch-ups gives me an opportunity to catch concerns early and avoid things turning into fires. I build trusted relationships with people in the team, which allows us to work through problems better. I get advocates for design and for working with users, and I get to know people and their personal goals and vision. 3, the team is aligned on product design, which means quicker story kickoffs, sign-offs, and fewer questions, which ultimately helps the team move faster. And 4, you help build up people's knowledge of experience design, especially new joiners, so they can work more effectively with the team. So one-to-one catch-ups didn't just help me, they helped the whole team work better together and build a culture centered around users. And if you want to use the characters that were in this section, it's made with Humans library, which is a mix and match character illustration library, which you can find here. So now on to our first section of 30 seconds to pop questions in the chat.
Thank you. So a few years ago, I worked with a delivery company in the UK to transform their technology and user experience. And the requirement was to design a dashboard for depot managers in distribution centers. So my client asked to create a dashboard with some visualized data and helpful information for depot managers. They believe that dashboard could help depot managers to improve the delivery process. So how would you approach a client asking for a dashboard? How will you unpack the brief? So when I heard the brief, I wanted to validate whether this solution would meet users and business needs. And if the analysis starts with a dashboard, there's a risk of missing users' primary jobs, frustrations, and delights. In my opinion, dashboards barely solve critical problems and help users with their daily tasks. This quote from Jared Spool is my favorite. Dashboards are often what customers ask for. They are rarely what customers need. If you are building a dashboard, it's likely your user research wasn't finished. Instead of relying on the brief and designing a dashboard for depot managers, I re-evaluated the brief. It's our job as designers to elicit real business needs and question the brief. How much value does a dashboard design brings to users and the business? My colleagues and I spent 2 days at a distribution center to carry out some user research. Even though the brief was to design a dashboard for depot managers, we decided to investigate further and observe depot workers and drivers as well. And 2 of my colleagues went with drivers, and I stayed at the depot to observe and interview depot managers and operation managers. However, one thing caught my attention. Drivers couldn't leave the depot until 10 a.m., which is very late to start the delivery. It was taking hours for drivers to sort the packages in the order of priority and location. Handheld devices were incredibly slow and not user-friendly. It was 10 a.m. already, and I asked why some of the drivers left later than others, and they said they were new and needed assisting. So before we ended the day at the depot, my colleagues called me to show me something. They showed me hand-drawn maps by drivers to show blocked roads and better routes. Drivers had copies of these maps in big folders, and they were relying on them more than the existing navigation systems. We uncovered drivers' pain points and needs, which the original brief didn't include. We synthesized the insights gained from the field study and turned it into opportunities. As a result, we decided to prioritize drivers' needs over managers. Drivers could learn the new product a lot quicker than the old one. The system could help them sort packages correctly and create a network between drivers to share some road recommendations. Moreover, they would be able to leave the depot a lot earlier, which means they are more on time for delivery. Building a product for drivers could directly impact the operation. And we used the power of user research to find evidence around real business needs. We found gaps in the business understanding of the problem. This experience helped stakeholders rethink the brief and think more deeply about user needs. Engaging with users helped us find the right users and build a product that significantly improves the operation. If we didn't study users in context, we would never know how much drivers could benefit from the new system. That's how I approached customers' brief and prevented them building the wrong thing. And now it's the end of story 2, and please write your questions in the chat.
Cool, thanks. So on to my next story. So in the enterprise, there's a unique opportunity to work with users so closely that they feel part of the team. This is what we did with one enterprise client recently, where we're working to replace a legacy operations platform. So early on, I met Laura, who worked in the customer support team, and she took me through her daily tasks. She accessed about 6 different applications just to do one task in the morning, jumping between Excel and legacy systems to get their tasks done, which is time consuming and inefficient, but it also kept customers waiting for a response. She also had scheduled reports pop into her inbox throughout the day, giving her updated data. She merged these reports into a master spreadsheet so she could have the right data all in one place, but it meant only she had the data, not anybody else. She had printouts and post-its on her desk explaining different system terms and steps. And this was just one person out of about 50 supporting a multi-billion-pound business. So there's a lot on the line to get this right. From this experience, I knew how important it would be to work with users regularly to build up my understanding of the domain, the inner workings of their jobs, and get their feedback on what works and what doesn't. So then I thought, how do I get regular time with busy users? My overall strategy was to get time with users every week, but I needed to build up to that. So I started with small sessions, doing them more often over doing big upfront research. Taking this slowly approach gets people comfortable with something new, and especially a stranger meeting with their operations teams. And later, when designs come together, I go back to the users and show them how their feedback helped shape the product, which closes the feedback loop. And they feel really good about doing the sessions to begin with. Second, I set up one-to-one time with the team managers to explain what I'm going to be doing, explaining the design approach, the value of having them involved directly. This makes it less scary for them, and they feel included in the process. Third, it's really important to align with the product manager on ways of working. As mentioned in the one-to-one section, having a good relationship with them and having an agreed ways of working, especially with how you're going to work with users. And fourth, day in the life sessions, I find are a great way of building up excitement with the product team as well as the business. This is where you connect the product team and actual users. I found an hour where pairs of people descend onto the business floor, sitting with different business teams and listening to what they do and the problems they have, creates such a positive atmosphere. It signals change is coming and that we want them to be part of the team building it. So once I built up this momentum, I set up weekly activities with users to get their input and feedback. This ranges from research at users' desks to observe how they work and better understand their needs, co-design workshops where users participate directly in whiteboarding, sketching, and ideation, and user feedback sessions, getting feedback on wireframes, clicking through design prototypes to understand the flow, and usability testing of early working software. So what was the impact of spending time with users every week? Delivered a product that worked for the business and that users loved. It saved them time across hundreds of calls that they were making every day. But it also improved customers' experience and their perception of the business because the response time increased, which is why I love this quote so much. But that wasn't all. Employees felt more satisfied because they felt ownership and part of the team building the product, and their voices and ideas were heard. Users built up familiarity with the sessions over time because we did them gradually, and we needed less intensive week-long training when the system was rolled out. And the system was also easier to roll out because we slowly reduced people's grip on a system that they were using every day for years and years, and they knew like the back of their hand. And with that comes comfort. And by having this be gradual, we reduced that grip on the old systems. And remember Laura? 9 months later, after being in design sessions almost every week, Laura was inspired to change careers and move from the customer support team to take on a product role in one of the product development teams. She flipped from participating in user sessions to facilitating sessions herself, getting feedback from her former team. So weekly time with users certainly didn't come without its challenges. One, you need to be responsible with users' time. Don't take up too much because they have day jobs, which could impact their performance as well as business performance. Two, it takes a long time to learn users' jobs. People can take 6 months to a year to learn a new role. And as a designer, you need to learn that in days to weeks. So use mapping and synthesizing to build up a sense of the bigger picture and help you accelerate this. Three, product managers often don't want to overpromise what users will get. So make sure that you're closely reviewing what you're showing users and they are aligned on that. Four, users can have a narrow view of the future. They're very operationally focused. So make sure you balance their feedback with business stakeholders' strategic view of things. And five, automating users' jobs can be sensitive. The things that you're building might take less people to do or may have no people that are doing them. So you need to be really sensitive about this conversation. Make sure you're having those conversations with stakeholders about communicating that. So to sum it up, spending time with users every week helped build a product that worked for the business and that users loved. Users were excited and engaged because they were part of building it, and that gave them satisfaction in their jobs. It was easier to roll out, and we spent less time on training because you gradually built up that knowledge of the system. And it inspired someone to change careers into a product role. And again, if you want to use the storyboarding characters in this, it's made with SAP Scenes, one of my favorite digital storyboarding tools, and you can check it out there. So that is end of story 3. So please pop your questions into the chat.
Thank you. So internal products often have very complex business domains and very complex user interfaces. As we mentioned in earlier slides, design is not usually a priority in enterprise solutions. With the new features, products become more problematic and harder to navigate for users. In one of my first clients at Thoughtworks, I worked with a bank to build a money withdrawal function for bank tellers. I visited 5 branches to understand a bank teller's life at the bank and what they see, what they hear, do, and say. I wasn't at the bank as a customer. This time I was behind the counter, sitting next to bank tellers, looking through their lens. I was sitting next to one of the users and she had so many post-it notes around her screen. I asked what those notes were for, and she said she recently joined the company and still learning the system. And I wondered how long she has been working for the bank. She said for 3 months. Enterprise solutions are complex in nature, and users usually go through a training process. Even after months of usage, it can be still hard for them to navigate through products. This situation made me think, internal products should be more user-friendly, and we should do something about it. And along with the experience design, can we use visual design to strengthen internal products? How much do you think can visual design impact enterprise solutions? So after a few visits to branches, I noticed that there is a pattern was emerging. Customers can withdraw money on behalf of their relatives, for example, parents, partners, and children. In this case, bank tellers have to verify customer's ID. As I demonstrated on the right, they can see all the customer information along with their registered relatives in the system. However, in my observation, most of the bank tellers didn't trust the information on the UI. They checked other systems to retrieve relative information. And they said it's because the data doesn't look up to date. Therefore, they don't trust the information displayed here. So I shared this insight with my team, and we did some investigation. As a result, the information displayed on the UI was actually up to date and reliable. We brainstormed and found a clever idea to make client information look reliable by changing only the front end. We designed a template that resembles an actual ID card. We displayed the customer information using this ID template. In addition, we implemented a simple loader to give a sense of trust and show the source of data. All the users said that now they trust the customer information on this page. We used visual design as a tool to build trust. The solution was very simple and easy to implement, yet it made a huge impact. And the next day, we were in a meeting with stakeholders, and I wanted to demonstrate the power of visual design. So the money withdrawal screen was on the big screen, and I asked stakeholders to tell me what the customer name was. And I asked them to point where the customer name is displayed. They all pointed to the one name displayed above the picture. And how many times do you think the customer name is repeated on the screen? On this screen, you can see the same customer name 6 times. People only notice the name above the picture and not others. In terms of visual hierarchy, the name above the customer photo is in the right place. That's why people noticed that one first. Other names didn't add any value, but created noise on the UI. Because there is no information architecture, the information is not structured and readable. Therefore, it's hard to find any information and very easy to miss important ones. This is only one example of how visual design can impact users reading and distinguishing the content. So couple with the experience design and use visual design as a tool to strengthen your product. A strategically designed user interface can make your product look reliable. Every element on the screen should serve a purpose. If it is not adding any value, it's adding noise. Remove the clutters and help your users concentrate. That includes icons, signals, and any indicators too. Visual hierarchy is a great way to help your users distinguish between essential and detail. Structure your content following the information architecture, display the relevant information together, and place them where people would expect to see it. In enterprise products, you will need a lot of space to display data, but you will need empty space too. Design wisely to fit enough data and spread out the content. Finally, make sure that you are designing for everyone. If your design is accessible, it is likely to be readable and user-friendly. And that is the end of our last story. Please write your questions in the chat.
All right, well, thanks for that. So what's your takeaway from what you've heard today? We hope that you've learned more about enterprise design today, the importance of unlocking time with users, focusing on building relationships and establishing trust with your team, stakeholders, and your users, and investing in the design of internal products. So you've heard from us how working with users builds more than a great product. It fosters a user-focused company culture and can even inspire people to change careers. And one-to-one catch-ups will make you a better designer and help you navigate and influence design in the team and wider organization.
By engaging users in their environment, we found gaps in the business understanding of the problem and prevent them building the wrong product. And visual design helped users do their job better and quicker and focus on the right information and build their trust with the system. So thank you very much for listening to our stories about enterprise design. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. Links are here. Now we have some time for questions.
Thank you, Esra and Gabe. I love the 30-minute intermission. I think actually it resonated with everyone, saying, oh, I actually have time to think about what you just told me and also think about, digest it and think about some questions. So you will not be surprised to hear that there's a ton of questions. And now you made my life really hard because I have to kind of figure out which ones we'll read out. So I'll try to maybe pick one per story. Maybe the time code will help me a little bit with that. And one of the first ones that was asked is, how do you phrase the opportunity for people to request or have one-on-ones with you? How do you incentivize them to actually spend time catching up?
So yeah, that's a really good question. It's interesting because I've never really had to incentivize necessarily. I've always found that people are open to meeting me, especially if I'm new and coming in to help them with something, and that's I guess what I try to emphasize, like right off the start with the one-to-ones. It's not necessarily about me and what I need. It's about how I can help them too. So it's this kind of two-way conversation. It's not I'm just taking all of their time. It's how can I help you and what can I bring to it? And I think if you bring that mentality to it, then people are pretty open about having those catch-ups.
Yeah, really great point that, yeah, it's not about us, it's actually about the other person, building that empathy and thinking about, okay, how can I help you and how we can do things together. That really resonates with me. Thank you, Gabe. And here's another good question. I feel like this is something we see often. So the next question is, how do you manage stakeholders who work for a long time in the company and usually think that they already know everything about users? So that's, I think, for the second story.
Yes, so this is very normal. If you are investing a lot of time in the company, you probably have a lot of knowledge, and I think you should respect that. It requires some actually time to build that relationship and trust. There's a lot of elements of everything, like having one-to-one conversations, one of them, and also showing some evidence of how much actually we need to know about users. Just show them something that they can actually start thinking about it, and don't expect that it's going to happen in one day. It's going to take some time. And also think about that they are working in the same company for a long time. There is an element of that too. And yeah, build your trust and show them some evidence and slowly build that up. And at the end, I have a lot of experience like that, and you will get to the point where you actually do user research together.
Nice.
I would maybe build on that as well with there's kind of no way that somebody can like dump everything that they know about how a team and people work like from their heads. Like that's just not how humans are built. Like you're there to observe and see and look at the tasks. We forget details. Our memories don't work like that. We don't remember every single thing and keep a hold of it. So if that person knows users really well, it might have been from like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, stuff like they've forgotten things. They've forgotten what it is to be like every day working on those pieces. And there's a lot of value in knowing those details.
Yeah, great point. And that things change, right? 2 years is a long time, and the world keeps moving. So I think that's a really nice point. Thank you, Esra and Gabe. I have now 2 questions that are a little bit similar around how do you get buy-in from management or internal stakeholders to invest in the UX for employees? And the second question, similar, is like investing time and resources in general for field research. How do you get that buy-in?
I can start with this one, and I'll pass it over to Esra too, because I think she'll definitely have some thoughts on this. I think that there's no silver bullet here. Like I think the best way is it'll depend on the context. It'll depend on the culture, depend on the people, like Sabrina, just as you've mentioned, with people that have been there for a long time. Like it all depends. And unfortunately, I don't have the like magic answer here for you, but I think the making that time for you to communicate to them that you're trying to help and you are bringing in a way that will help them build a more efficient product that is going to save time, that is going to save business hours and potentially money, and reduce the risk of the business running. Like, so I think if it's stakeholders, it's making it about how you're de-risking the business is the tool that I use. But ultimately, like you need to focus on the individual as well and that relationship, and that is going to be different for different environments.
Yeah, definitely. I think showing the value of doing it and also showing what happens if you don't do it. So you are also explaining the risk of not doing this user research. Yeah, and I also agree with the point of understanding their point of view, not only the wider company in general, and try to understand people as persons and what they value and what they fear. Maybe they fear of losing something, or maybe they fear of exposing some information to you, and try to understand what that is and figure out how to unblock that. It really depends on the company, but these are usually the things that we see.
Actually, yeah, that's a great point, because they will have war wounds and scars as well. So like ask about those, ask why they're concerned about this. And normally there's something behind it. It's not just because like they've seen something bad in the past. So I think that's a great point.
Because by going to, we shared a lot of stories, right? We are sitting next to them. We are seeing how their business operates. We are in their environment, literally. And that's very important. And they should trust you with what you are going to do with this information too. So figure out what actually is going to make them nervous about this.
Nice. And here's another question around how are interactions with colleagues different to the usual interactions with external users?
I can start with that, Gabe. What do you think?
Yep, go for it.
There are similarities, but they are different. So we shared some of the actual information today. When you are, in terms of user experience, I think they are the same for me. I think they are both equally very important, and I would do a very similar user research. However, when you are approaching colleague, And if it is internal user, you have to consider a lot of the other things, especially in user research. You have to agree on their time with stakeholders, and you have to agree on what to talk to users, because it's internal communication too. What you are asking might actually create a lot of questions mark on them. So you have to make sure that you are addressing them. And there are actually a lot of other things too, and you have to make sure that you are planning this accordingly and get approval from their team managers too. And during the, let's say you are running a usability testing, and make sure that if their managers are watching that, make sure that you build that trust and safe environment for them, and they can speak up very openly about their users, because they might be fear of losing their jobs or come across as a bad employee. But this is not why we run usability testings, right? There is so many things that you have to consider when you are approaching a colleague or internal users. It's definitely different than external users.
Yeah, definitely +1 the trust point, like building that safe environment so they feel comfortable giving you feedback. I think that's really important. And I would say also a big difference is from what Esra mentioned early in the talk. There's people have to use these systems, and they're using them every day, all the time. So your biggest competitor is not like another app, it's Excel, really. Like if they don't use it, they'll probably use a spreadsheet. And so understanding that is important to the product that you're building.
Wonderful. Really, really interesting about who your real competitor is. Thank you, Gabe, and Esra for the wonderful answers to the questions. There are still a ton in the chat, so I think thank you to both of you, because I now learned how to get more questions out of people in this session. And I'm sorry for all the questions that we couldn't answer yet. I think we'll try to see that we can pick out a couple that we can maybe still answer in the Q&A afterwards. And I would say, Gabe, Esra, thank you very, very much for an amazing talk. And we now have a 15 minutes break before we continue with the afternoon part of our program. Thank you. And
thank you very much for hosting us, and thank you very much for listening.